What is financial success? Well, according to Gen Z, that number is somewhere around $600,000 a year. I wonder why. Jokes aside, in this video, I'm going to share with you 6 traps that are killing your wealth and how you can avoid them to be financially free on way less than 600 grand. Now, when looking at spending categories, one of the top things that Americans are spending their money on is their new shiny car. Today, car payments are at an all-time high, with the average one ranging between $500 and $800 for one car. So let's explore why this is a trap and how you can avoid it. Now, something a lot of people know, but maybe you don't, is when you go to buy a new car and drive it off the lot, 15 to 20% of its value instantly goes away. Over the next 4 years, it loses half of its initial value, which is a big financial loss for most people. A new car can cost you $10,000 over 5 years when compared to a slightly used one. Now, this is not just the car cost, because a lot of this is going towards maintenance, insurance, and any other costs that are hidden. So usually the best strategy when shopping for a car is go for a used car between 4 and 7 years. It's past the worst of its depreciation, and that'll save you thousands of dollars. A car that's only been used 4 to 7 years is still going to be reliable, so you can trust that it's going to get you where you need to go every single day. Not only that, the extra $10,000 you're going to save has a lot of opportunity cost. For instance, if you took the $500 you save a month by getting a used car, you could easily invest that into the stock market and return millions. That's not just hypothetical. If you drive your current car a few more years, you're going to save a lot of money on unnecessary payments. But it's not just cars holding you back. Now that we bring up investing, we need to talk about something even more dangerous: waiting to invest. There's 2 terms you're going to hear me use here: time in the market versus timing the market. Time in the market is how long you've held on to stocks and how long you've been in the market for. Timing the market is a strategy where you're buying stocks at specific times where you think they're at their lows, so you're hoping they're going to rise. 95% of investors are not able to beat index funds like the S&P 500, even ones that have been specifically trained to do so. I'm going to show you the difference between time in the market versus timing the market. This is a chart showing you what $10,000 would be worth if you invested in the stock market in January of 2003. As you can see, if you left the money in there for 19 years, you'd have almost $65,000. But let's say you got anxious about drops and took your money out of the stock market. Just missing the 10 best days cuts your total earnings in half. This chart also highlights the fact that 7 out of the 10 best days happen in bear markets, which is when the stock market's overall trending downwards. And as we continue looking down the chart, your returns just get worse and worse. Once you're missing 60 of the best days, you're actually negative. This is why consistency and time in the market is the most important thing when it comes to maximizing your return. I am not a financial advisor, but I personally like using dollar cost averaging. You invest a set amount of money in regular intervals. That way you can buy at the lows and buy at the highs, and everything averages out to a median price. It's the easiest way to invest in the stock market without constantly worrying about when you're investing. Now, another key is just making sure you start whenever possible. Even if you only have $50 to give that $50. You don't want to wait, because over time your compound interest is going to lose effect. As well as building the habit is most important when you're first starting out. And while investing is crucial, there's an invisible enemy eating away at your money every single day. It's called inflation. Every single year, your dollar loses about 3 to 7% of its value. $100 last year can buy you less than $100 can today. Now, this leads to reduced purchasing power. So a coffee that cost $4 back in 2022 might have slightly increased to 5 or 6, and this doesn't seem like a big deal, but it affects things like houses as well. Inflation isn't just about numbers. It's a constant erosion of what your money can really do. People with fixed incomes and people who let their money sit in the bank are going to feel this the most. The average bank account gives 0.25% annually, so let's say we have a 4% inflation rate. Your money is losing value by 3.75% every single year. So let's look at an actual real-world example of this. Let's say you have $10,000 and you earn 1% interest every year for 10 years. With an average 3% annual inflation, which is actually a little bit low, your money's real value drops to about $7,400. That's why investing in the stock market, in bonds and CDs, isn't just about getting rich. It's about beating inflation. But inflation aside, what about your biggest financial decision? Buying a house. One wrong mistake may ruin your financial future. There's 2 ways you can go about getting a house: home ownership or renting, and I'm going to cover the pros and cons of both. First, the classic question: is home ownership better than renting? Well, it all depends on your goal and your finances. Let's go over home ownership pros first. When you take out a mortgage, you're taking out a loan on your house at its current value. Now, that may seem like useless information, but over time, houses tend to appreciate, which means they gain value the longer they're there. When the home appreciates, you get something called equity. So I'm going to give you an example of exactly what that is. Let's say you buy a home for $200,000 with a 20% down payment. Over 30 years, you continuously pay off your mortgage until you own the house, and at that point, it's worth $400,000. You took out a loan for $200,000 and got $400,000 in return. Not only did you double your money, you got $200,000 of equity, which is a massive boost to your net worth. But let's look at a few cons home ownership can give you as well. One, it gives you less flexibility to move because you're locked into that 30-year mortgage regardless. If anything goes wrong in the house, you have to put a lot of money towards maintenance and fees. Those are the 2 main cons, but let's go ahead and look at renting's pros. But if you're young, you don't have to put down a down payment when renting, and you also don't have to be responsible for any of the maintenance fees. You're also not tied down because most leases only last 1 year to 6 months. months, so you're able to have a lot more flexibility in terms of where you want to live. This may allow you to chase new career opportunities and continue developing yourself. Now, the cons are you're most likely paying someone else's mortgage for them, and you're giving them equity and cash flow, so you're kind of losing out there, but you get the flexibility in return. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on where you're at in your life and your long-term plans in the future. Owning is great for building wealth and equity, but renting allows flexibility and freedom to choose where you want to live. Speaking of financial responsibility, the most important factor is understanding how debt works and how it can make or break your future. Now, there's two types of debt that we need to talk about: good debt and bad debt. Let's start with bad debt and the snowball effect it can have on your finances. Credit cards are a good example of bad debt, so let's look at what a $5,000 credit card balance can do to you. $5,000 in credit card debt at 20% annually will double in under 4 years. Now, to deal with this, you need to make more than the minimum payment every month, and it should be your top priority to get rid of the debt as soon as possible. The steps you need to follow are pay off any bad debt, build an emergency fund, and then consistently invest. Now, let's look into some good debt like student loans or mortgage rates. They usually come with low interest payments, and you can pay them off over a long period of time. Student loans allow you to increase your earning potential by qualifying for higher paid positions due to your degree. Taking out a mortgage will allow you to increase your net worth over a long period of time. Bad debt drains your wealth with high interest and no long-term benefit. So knowing the difference between these two can be crucial to your financial success. Finally, let's address the most common trap most people fall into: the societal pressure to fit in. You often hear about people who do not have the finances taking out credit card debt to buy a new car or to buy something else, and most of the time it's just so other people will accept them. The personal method I like to do is have a 5% baller fund. Now, I did steal this from the Keto King, but I think it's absolutely great. This 5% baller fund you can spend on anything you want guilt-free. As long as you're maintaining the discipline to keep it at or under 5%, you can be perfectly fine to just ball out. Another thing you can do is pause and reflect. You can ask yourself, do I really even want this, or do I just think other people are going to think it's awesome? Even waiting 24 hours before a purchase can save you from buying something you really don't want. Now, you have to remember, true wealth is not about impressing others. It's about financial security in the future. So live below your means now, and you'll thank yourself later. Building wealth is not complicated, but it does take discipline. Avoid the traps of cars, designer clothes, and lifestyle inflation. Instead, focus on investing, staying consistent, and thinking long-term always. All you have to do is start today, because every small step is going to lead to big gains in the future.